Right. Hello, everyone. Good day to you all, and happy Friday. Thank you for joining me for the eighth episode of Rubic Weekly Chat of 2022. I'm your host, Colin O'Brien, and I am happy to be here today to share updates with you regarding the Rubic project and our multi chain protocol, as well as interviewing a new guest. Today's episode is yet another good one, so I hope you've come prepared and equipped with many new questions. As always, I'm happy to answer as many of your questions as I can. If I don't have an answer for you, I'll consult with the rest of our team so I can try to get you an answer. This week, we have a new guest on our show. Today, I'm joined by the product manager of Ref Finance, Didier Peroni. But before we begin our conversation, I'll be going through the Rubic Weekly Update report, recapping development and marketing elements for the past week. I'll cruise through our weekly update in one go, and then we'll move on to the interview portion of today's podcast. Afterwards, we'll turn to our audience to answer your questions. Now, if you are interested in lending your voice to this podcast and are feeling up to asking us a question live, you're more than welcome to click the mic button in the bottom left-hand corner of your user interface for Twitter Spaces. And as always, feel free to ask any questions in our main Telegram chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can. All right, let's jump into the weekly update report. All right, starting off with development for both the widgets and the SDK. So this week, the Rubic SDK team continued working on the development of the SDK. Right now, the team is working closely with more than 5 projects, and they are all thoroughly testing the alpha version. They're giving us feedback, and they are eagerly awaiting the beta version in order to complete the full integration of our protocol into their projects. Even more projects are in the process of testing our alpha as well. Now, throughout the week, we began completing the final steps before the beta launch of our SDK. These steps include bug fixes and other final stress testing. This release will include the main functionality of our current protocol features for both on-chain and multi-chain swaps. We are preparing for the release of the beta version of our SDK ahead of schedule, and we're planning to release that next week. All right, for multi-chain development, BRBC staking. So this Tuesday, we launched the second round of BRBC staking. The Rubic team made a lot of improvements since the launch of the first round of staking, but we know we have a lot to improve on yet still, and we will further improve the user experience in all future staking and liquidity provision campaigns. The pool of the second round of staking was filled in less than an hour, and there are some bullet points going over all of the staking details. You can go ahead and read that in the weekly update report, as well as checking out a link to our Medium article regarding it, and you'll be able to look at all the detailed information pertaining to the second round of staking on our Medium. Okay, for multi-chain routing pools. So for the past month, Rubic has demonstrated stable growth of both swaps and volume through our multi-chain protocol. Currently, Rubic has a total accumulated transaction volume of over $197 million. Right now, the Rubic team is working on increasing the size of the current liquidity pools on the different connected networks as part of our multi-chain protocol ecosystem. We are currently researching different ways on how we can improve and also allow users to swap more tokens between all of our connected networks. So we'll share more details with you guys on that later in March, but bottom line, you'll be able to swap more in a single transaction. Marketing. So a bunch of different marketing elements to touch on this week. There is a very mysterious crypto blogger on YouTube by the name of Encryptoed, and he recently posted a video talking about Rubic. He started his video talking about Rubic. Check that out. There is a link in the weekly report. It's a really cool overview of Rubic and all of our features. And we're also continuing with our banner ad campaigns. So we've updated our banners this week. You'll still be able to see them, albeit new banner art on BSC Scan, Etherscan, Polygon Scan, and on Coin360. You guys can check that out right now. You can also check out screenshots of those banners up on those websites in the weekly update report, so make sure to go check those out. Now, we are also very excited to announce the start of a digital ad campaign on CryptoBanter.com. You guys may know Crypto Banter, Rand Nooner, as a big YouTuber and Twitter influencer. He's talked about Rubic before as a hidden gem, a diamond of a token. And it seems that he does really love our project. And the guys over at the office have mentioned to me that they use Rubic on a daily basis. So now the whole of Crypto Banter's community will be able to see our banners on his website. So make sure you guys go check that out. We also have screenshots on our weekly update report. Another big Twitter influencer, Joshua Roomsberg, he recently tried out Rubic and was very excited about it. He managed to swap tokens with 0% fees. He posted a tweet about it as well. So thank you to Joshua for the shout out. Updates on the referral campaign program. So we already have more than 650 active referrals participating in our campaign. While we hope this will indeed lead to a vast increase in the number of current and future widget integrations, our team is building some partnerships of our own. So this week we have 4 new projects that integrated our widget. We have Moon Akita, BSC Bay, Forest, and Catbonk. Now with this integration, they're making the investing experience of their users much easier, since they'll now be able to purchase and swap all of their desired tokens directly on their respective projects' websites. Okay, both of our Rubic founders, Alexandra and Vladimir, as well as our business developer Sven, are going to the AIBC UAE Expo held in Dubai. It runs from March 20th to March 23rd, and it will unite policymakers, developers, C-suite executives, as well as legal experts of the crypto space. That was a tongue twister for some reason. With a special focus on networking. So our team has actually already been invited to 2 different VIP networking dinners, enabling them to get in touch with some major players in the crypto sphere and lay the foundation for some solid partnerships for Rubic. Today, you can check out a interview that I did with the Rise and Grind podcast. I went on there to discuss the recent Near integration and all about our future plans here at Rubic. We'll have a link to that recorded podcast. It's a YouTube link in the weekly update report. And then just a little blurb about me hosting the podcast today and talking to the project manager of Ref Finance. So, with that said, that pretty much wraps up our weekly report. And let's now turn to our guest. Please welcome Didier Perroni, the product manager of Ref Finance. Hey Didier, thank you for joining us today. Could you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, yeah, really glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, well, my name is Didier. I'm the product manager of Ref Finance, which is the first fintech accelerator program. It's like Y Combinator. And yeah, for the fintech accelerator program in London. And then after that, I started a crypto company, and then I moved to DeFi last September, working full-time for Near and Ref Finance.
Nice. So, I mean, like, that's an interesting background. Like, how specifically did you get involved in crypto itself?
Yeah, so actually, I started to be very interested in the XRP ledger back in 2014, which is now called, well, back then it was the Ripple ledger, but now it's the XRP ledger. I started to be interested in the payments and the use case of solving corporate payments and interbank payments, with the idea of removing those nostro-bustro accounts between banks. And so, yeah, I started to dig in back in 2014, and then I was willing to push for blockchain within PwC, but it was quite early on for them. And yeah, I just wanted to have an exposure to the crypto industry, so I started my own company after that, which was like a crypto arbitrage solution. And then yeah, I raised 1.5 million for that, but I was not successful at raising 30, 40 millions, and you need this kind of money if you want to be profitable in this business. So I was yeah, and then obviously arbitrage is a very good starting point to understand market structures, right? Because you need to know what's the central limit order book, what's a request for quotation, what's like an automated market maker. So after that, it was kind of natural for me to move to the DeFi space, and I was very intrigued by the near ecosystem. I found a great community there, and yeah, starting to also develop and have my first experience with a smart contract with Near, and Ref was the first vertical on Near, and yeah, I started to be involved in the community, and they gave me this amazing opportunity to be the product manager.
Nice. Well, as product manager, you're the expert on Ref Finance. So, can you break it down for us? Like how like what is the goal of the company? What's the goal of your guys' product? Can you go over that for us, please?
Yeah, of course. So Refinance is what's basically it's a DEX. So it's a crypto exchange. Um, we have two constant product formulas. So the solution is inspired by Uniswap V2, but we also have a different invariant for stable coins, which is inspired by the Curve Finance model. So basically, what does that mean is we are like a permissionless, what we call, I prefer permissionless than decentralized qualification actually, but it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a permissionless exchange, meaning that you don't need any permission if you want to trade and if you want to provide liquidity. So yeah, basically a crypto exchange with two invariants and other features like farming and staking. So we like to call ourselves like a one-stop DeFi shop, which means one-stop means actually offering different services, and by that we want to serve different use cases. If you are a company and your treasury is in USDT, but you want to pay an invoice in DAI, then you will use the stable swap. If you are a degen and you want to buy the meme coin, then you will use our traditional swap function. If you want to stake and have a share in the protocol revenue, then you can also do that by staking our token, basically. But yeah, Refinance is a crypto exchange in two words.
Nice. So what I mean, is there any like hidden meaning behind the name, or how did that name come about?
So actually, the exchange was created almost a year ago by Ilya, the co-founder of Near Protocol, and I think ref comes from the idea, of a referee, like in sports, and I think as a market, every single market sets its own rules, right? How you can trade, what you can trade. So I think yeah, ref comes from that idea, but I came afterwards. So
Got it. Well, it's a clever name. Clever name, absolutely. Um, it fits in with the ethos of what you guys are doing over there. Um, so I mean, with the creation of networks like Near, and projects like Ref Finance, how do you guys see this space evolving over the next year or two? And how do you see the growth and expansion of the Near protocol, and how that plays into kind of like dethroning Ethereum as the staple, you know, DApp blockchain?
Yeah. Well, first, first I think that it's still pretentious, to compare with such an ecosystem as Ethereum, right? Because when you have a look at
Sure.
the number of users, for example, I think they have like weekly, like 1.5 million weekly active users, which is pretty huge. And I don't remember exactly um, the number of active developers, but I think it's over 4,000. And to give some comparison, I think near we have around 50,000 active weekly active users and around 300 plus active developers. When you have a look at the figures and the famous electric capital report, right? So
Mm.
obviously the community is still very involved within the ETH ecosystem, but I think that thanks to and as Vitalik said during ETH Denver, sharding is not a concept anymore, right? It's happening, and it's happening on
Mm.
near actually. So we have the sharding experience, which means that you don't pay, well, you pay very low transaction fees, and there is like a very fast settlement of your transaction, like 1 to 2 second finality on chain. So I think given that we can compete with alternative layer ones and layer two, but I would say that on top of that there is a very strong community within the near ecosystem. So if you are a creator, an entrepreneur, and if you want to develop on top of near, then there is a very active and strong community. You can ask questions, and usually, most importantly, you will have answers to those questions. In quite fast. So it's a very it's a fascinating space, right? But I think that as and also as Vitalik said, that the future will be multi-chain, and I think Rubic, right, positioning is quite um, well, is quite embracing this kind of vision, right? Because like email 10, 20 years ago, we used to have like Gmail, Yahoo, and so on, and then you could only communicate within your own email platform, right? But then with SMTP, now obviously we have only one protocol for email. So I think that as an analogy, I think the space will be multi-chain, and there won't be. It's not like a winner takes it all game. So I think that because the entry cost is very high to develop on one blockchain. So once you are settled on your blockchain, and if there is like a decent user base, then you will basically stay on this blockchain for quite a while. So I believe in a multi-chain future.
Yeah, I mean, it's my personal opinion that I think the only way this industry truly evolves into becoming, adopted globally by the average citizen, is it wholly depends on having a blockchain agnostic future for apps, like apps that can operate
Yes.
on your mobile device, or a desktop, but regardless of what network it's operating on or what cryptocurrency you currently own it could be on an entirely different network, being able to use value in the crypto that you own across all the different applications, across all the different blockchain networks, will be, uh, you know, a requirement for widespread adoption. So, yeah, helping to facilitate that in any way we can is, I think, only going to be a good thing for this, this burgeoning industry.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Speaking of the industry as a whole, right? There's a lot going on in the world right now. There's a lot of craziness happening in the world, and there's a lot of renewed talk of regulation. Um, and I think that regulation is going to bring more legitimacy. It'll give people a lot of anxiety and fear and hesitation when seeking to invest in this industry for the very first time, and then ardent supporters of the industry as a whole are also experiencing some fear and uncertainty and doubt with regard to just regulation as a whole as well, because there is a negative connotation associated with regulation. How do you see that impacting ref finance, and how do you see those changes affecting the industry as a whole as we move forward in this crazy new decade?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that regulation first. I think that regulation is not a bad thing, and I think that if we want to scale massively, it's like mandatory to be, to embrace regulation, because otherwise we want in this space, onboard not hundreds of thousands of users, but millions, tens of millions of users. So from my from my perspective, I think that regulation is like mandatory, and I see the future with um, you know with a bridge between DeFi and regulation. Um, I also think that regulation is not like a bad word, because there's a good intention behind it, at least at the beginning, right? And this intention is, well, how do I inform my users about the risks of using my platform? And just taking that and taking 5 minutes to reflect on that, and telling to your users, well, this is the risks behind using our platform. And our approach at Red Finance, actually, if you go to our platform, we have a risk section that you can see on the front page. So if you click on this risk section, what we've tried to do is to identify the different risks using our platform, and and that goes from admin keys to rug pull to systemic issues, and to trading addiction. So I think first we say that to our users, and maybe second we speak to regulatory bodies in a second step, and potentially doing KYC and so on. But yeah, I really see a future with regulation, right? I
Hmm.
also think that regulation doesn't mean scalability, because I think that when you think about it, and if a bank tells you, well, I have a license, and another bank tells you, well, I don't have a license, but I've been operating for the last 100 years. And what does that mean is, in the second case, well, this entity is resilient, right? This entity has gone through many market cycles, and I find it even more powerful than the license itself. So I think that as the industry is maturing, and as we are, as a crypto exchange, going through many market cycles, then the more credible we will be too. So I think there is also a function of time in our success, and not only getting a stamp from the regulator.
That's a really good take. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that, like I said, there are a number of people in the industry who have negative associations with regulation, but I think if we are to adopt enterprise business into the fold, which will really push widespread adoption. That regulation is an absolute necessity and a requirement. We need to have legal frameworks in place to protect individuals, and investors, and businesses alike, from bad actors out there. So, yeah, it's only going to help bring more legitimacy to the industry over time. So, I appreciate your take on that.
Yeah, exactly. And if I can add something to that,
Sure.
I think DeFi is really in a different position than 3 4 years ago, right? Because
Oh yeah.
because when you have a look at, I think the treasury of Uniswap like was 50 million 2 years ago, and now it's 2 billion. So I think that there's also something nobody is talking about, but this thing is the DeFi treasury in general, and I think that we are in a much better position, and this dry powder, right,
Hmm.
that constitutes a great leverage to for protocols to strengthen their presence in the lobbying game, you know, and 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 I think that yeah, DeFi in general is in a very different position than 3 years ago.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's accelerating very fast too.
Yeah.
Um,
Basically, we have money now, not us, but
yeah,
the legacy entrance, right?
yeah, absolutely. um, well, yeah, it's interesting that you were talking earlier about how you guys like to consider Ref Finance as kind of like a one-stop shop, because we've used very similar kind of marketing language. Rubic being a one-stop shop to help people, migrate between different blockchain networks as effortlessly as possible. Um, so, can you give our listeners today your thoughts and insights on what interoperability will mean for the growth of your platform and how Rubik will help you guys realize that?
Yeah, well, I think that composability is like a very important piece of the ecosystem for us because um, as the ecosystem is growing, then users can do many things, right? And basically doing many things can be associated with a degree of freedom, right? So the more you can do, the more freedom you have. And yeah, I think on near at the moment you can stake, you can liquid stake and use what you are getting to, for example, farm or to trade. But you can also uh, trade a token, and then with this token you can play a game. So this whole chain of composability is obviously very key, but the near ecosystem is, I think the near protocol has 1 year and a few months since launch, so still very young. But yeah, but I think it's quite key that, for example, when you have a lending borrowing platform, those people can take advantage of their collateral without losing their exposure and then do something else in the meantime. And Rubik, I think, can allow that between different blockchains, which is amazing, right? Because first, Rubik can be used as a cornerstone. I think that's really the term, as a cornerstone, to arbitrage those different blockchains and those different yields among those blockchains. But also, well, I basically have money on Arbitrum, but I want to play this game on Near, and to play this game I need the token, right? So,
Mm.
but I can actually do that directly using Rubik in a single transaction, and I think that's quite mind blowing, right? But that's
Mhm.
the whole idea behind uh, this idea of increasing operability, composability among the blockchains. Yeah.
Yeah, um, yeah, and it's very, very, poignant observation because
But
we're
yeah.
we're currently working with some blockchain games, and that's exactly how they're utilizing our SDK at the moment. Is they have integrated it into the game itself. So using the current like in-game UI, you'll be able to, just connect your crypto wallet, and if you have tokens that are, part of the part of our ecosystem, we have over 15,000. You can swap it for their token for in-game purchases and things like that. So that kind of like just effortless cross-chain, multi-chain interoperability. Um, I mean, that's what's required for widespread adoption, right? Like the average person who just is not that particularly tech savvy, um, they can't be bothered with all the nuances right now that are part of the crypto experience. I mean, it's very nuanced right now. It's very um, like complicated, and it's intimidating to the average person.
Yes.
I've said before that Web 3.0, it just needs to happen, right? Like the average person shouldn't need to really change the way they interact with their applications. It should just be a seamless transition. And what's really just happening behind the scenes is those users, they're empowered with more control over their own data, and being able to move value without middlemen, skimming off the top every inch of the way, and do so in a very, like you were saying, permissionless environment, right? So I think that that's key, and it's cool that I have somebody else working on another project on our broadcast to talk about this, because it's really important as stewards of this burgeoning industry that we make widespread adoption as easy as possible for the average person, and to educate people when we can, but again, to make it as easy as possible for people to experience all the benefits that DeFi and Web 3.0 is going to bring to the world. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also when from our experience on Near, I think also the semi side of composability is that by nature you depend on someone else, right, or on another organization. Let's say you want to allow your users to take advantage of your farms, for example. So like a yield aggregator. Well, will you build it yourself, or will you wait for a yield aggregator to be built on Near, for example, or to be built on your own blockchain slash ecosystem? And I think also that's a very sometimes that's a very tough question, because do you have the time to wait? I think on EVM compatible environments where you can have turnkey deployments like on Aurora, well, the strategy might be simpler, right? But on Near, it's not that simple, because you need to take into account this waiting time in your roadmap, and in your strategy, right? So just to give you like a very simple example, when you do a platform, one of the first things users want is analytics. So how much volume do you make? How many swap? Can I see the breakdown of a liquidity pool? Can I understand the wealth structure of a liquidity pool to mitigate my risk if there is only one, if there is only one liquidity provider, for example, and those sort of data. So we and if you can't wait for the graph to be integrated with your blockchain, well, you just do it for your users. So there's always, I think, a good balance between, well, can I do it better than other participants, and do I have and do I have the resources to do that, or, well, shall I wait for this composability and other legal monies to stack, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your takes on that. Thank you, Didier. That's
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to turn to our Telegram chat, and again, anybody who's currently listening in Twitter Spaces, if you'd like to ask us a question, um, just ask by clicking the request to speak button in the bottom left-hand corner. So let me go through some of these questions real quick. I've got a question here from Igor. He wants to know about any information regarding liquidity provision or the raising of transaction limits. We actually covered that in our weekly update report today. The team is currently investigating and exploring ways to increase the liquidity pools for stablecoins on all of our different networks. In addition to that, also increasing the current limits per transaction through our multi-chain protocol. We will have more information to share regarding that research later this month. But from what I understand, the team is narrowing down on some solutions, and we'll have those restrictions, alleviated here pretty soon. Let's see here. I've got a question here from John O. He wants to know, with everything unfolding in Russia and Ukraine, is the Rubic team feeling any repercussions? No. From what I understand, no, they're not. They're not feeling any repercussions. It is. It's a tragedy what's happening. It's very unfortunate that this kind of thing exists still in this day and age, but I think it's just human nature. Um, Having said that, the project itself is going to be just fine. We're an international team, with operating in DeFi, and we're not beholden to centralized entities and restrictions just yet. So again, with regulation, things can change, and we'll adapt accordingly. But for the foreseeable future, no, there's currently no issues. Let's see here. Okay. Trying to find some of these questions here. Don't have a lot of text questions at the moment. While I'm searching for some through my personal DMs that I did not flag in advance, which I should have, can you explain to our community a little bit more about yield farming on your guys' platform?
Yeah, sure. Um, well, yeah, yield farming is I mean, it's pretty like a straightforward yield farming solution, which means that if you provide liquidity, and actually you need to provide liquidity before, and then once you provide liquidity, you have LP shares, right? And with those LP shares, you obviously take a revenue that derives from the swap fee of the pool, but you can also stake those LP shares to take rewards on top of your swap fee. So at the moment we have, I think, 15 plus farms, and it's quite diverse. So you have basically we have like a stable coin farm where you can have like 15% APR. We have obviously everything with near. So we it's very very attractive APR at the moment as we want to um, as we want to scale and to increase our user base. So uh, there's like a very quite a decent amount of money there at the moment. Plus, in addition to ref token, you also have multi rewards. So what we do is generally with the different projects, we like to have partnerships, which means that in the farm you will have ref, and in top of that you will have the project token. So it's often true with near native projects. So for example, if you have a look at um, DBio, for example, which is like um, like a data, um, a medical blockchain. Then you have the pioneer, and you basically have both rewards, for example. So yeah, there is quite a lot of options if you want to farm, um, and yeah, there is also if you want to track your position, and if you are, it depends your profile, right? If you are a degen, or if you are more risk adverse. But if you are more risk adverse, you can also in ref analytics track your divergence loss automatically. So the only thing you need to do is to provide your amount, both tokens you provided initially, and that will give you straight your divergence loss. And if the rewards you've been farming is basically greater than this divergence loss, then you're making money. So um, so you have all the tools to farm in a smart way.
Well, thank you for giving us the breakdown. I know for a lot of people it's pretty self-explanatory and straightforward, but again, I think we have a responsibility, and as kind of pioneers and stewards in the industry, to educate people, to make sure that everybody is aware of all the opportunities that exist in DeFi, and to how to navigate that, and to not be intimidated by it. Because I mean, I know for myself personally, just getting involved in crypto, like actually sending money from wallet to wallet and participating in yield farming, like it was all very, like, I was just nervous. I was nervous the whole time. You're like sitting there checking it on one of the scan websites like Etherscan, and you're just watching the pending, and you're waiting for it to go through successful. I mean, that whole process, the very first time you do all of it, is nerve wracking. So anything we can do to alleviate that experience for people in the future, I'm all for it. I don't want people to have to go through what I did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think no one likes to execute, right? Even normal, like traditional traders, you're always afraid of doing a fat finger, or you don't know. So executing is always kind of painful. So, but I think when you don't have those, noisy, data and environment like in a central limit order book, and that's also the reason why I like an automated market maker or the Rubic interface. It's very simple, like no noise. You just focus on the amount in, and then you click on one button. So I think that's cuts the noise, and I quite like this simplification approach.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you do. I'm sure many other people are going to feel the exact same way. Simplification is key. Making it as easy as possible is key. I think it's probably the most critical aspect of widespread adoption. The entry barrier needs to be almost non-existent. Um, and then
Exactly.
once you're in, and once you're participating, making the quality of life experience as best as it possibly can be is tantamount to retaining users. So, yeah, low barrier of entry, and then keep people around. I mean, that's the goal, and the way you do it is through simplicity, and just very like common sense practices for making the user experience a better one. So
Yeah, exactly.
um, let's see here. We got another question. This is from Larry. Larry wants to know, will Rubic be able to implement a situation where I can use my exchange token to pay for a gas fee rather than holding a base token? Larry, yes and no is the answer to that question. Because you'll need some base token, some native token on whatever your source network is to be able to interact with any contracts on that particular network. So, on Binance Smart Chain, you'll need BNB. On Ethereum, you'll need ETH. On, so on and so forth. Having said that, though, if you're doing a multi-chain swap and you're going to a target network, I suppose yes, it's definitely possible to use our RBC token to pay for the gas on the target network. It would just incur additional hops, which may incur um, a loss in potential value for the maximum amount that you would get for your particular swap. So while it is a possibility, it may not be the most advantageous from a value perspective. But that was one of the reasons why we switched our multi-chain pools to stablecoins. Well, one of the reasons. So yeah, I'm yes and no is the answer to that question. Um, and in the future, maybe things will change. We'll see. Chuck asks, any new update on a Q2 roadmap and beyond? I don't have an updated roadmap for our community at this time. It is something that we are working on. We're trying to narrow down deadlines and estimations for when we believe we'll integrate new features and add additional blockchains and things like that. So we are working in cooperation with our dev team, the marketing side, to put that roadmap together, and we'll definitely have an updated roadmap for Q2 and potentially detailing Q3 as well before the end of March. So we'll get that out. All right. Bobby Brown wants to know anything on improving the UI UX to show the full list of chains available. I don't really know exactly what you mean by your question. If you mean in the actual user interface for on app.rubic.exchange, if you're talking about being able to see all of the blockchain networks in one screen, or if we're going to be adding the names underneath the icons. I know that that is something that's been requested, adding the names of the blockchains, because not everybody knows what the logos represent. And as we continue to add more and more blockchain networks, it's going to get a little confusing for people. And again, yes, making the quality of life experience as enjoyable as possible is the name of the game. And so a lot of those little quality of life updates will be reflected in the UI UX on app.rubic.exchange, as well as our widget. So yeah. Yeah, Laugh just asked that. Anything on improving the UI to make it beginner friendly by having the names of the blockchains? Yes, that is. We've had a number of people request that. That is something that I know the team has currently on their list of things to do. Oh, and Bobby Brown, yeah, showing all 11 options, not just 6. Yeah, I mean, it depends on your display interface, right? Like if you have your aspect ratio and your pixel count size if you're on desktop, and then on mobile it's pretty standardized across multiple mobile devices. I don't know if that's something that they can do, if they can fit all 11 on like the mobile UI. It would be a little bit easier to do on desktop, but I think it's a moot point just because, this time next year we intend to have, close to 2 dozen blockchain networks that are fully integrated into our multi-chain protocol. So I think regardless, you'd be scrolling through the different networks. We could absolutely um, change or modify the user interface to um, point people to the fact that there are more than just whatever blockchains are currently being displayed. So yeah, there's a number of things we can do to increase the quality of life, to make it easier for people who are just starting, and jumping into DeFi for the very first time, and Rubic being their first experience. We want to make it a very enjoyable one. So, they don't just continue using Rubic, but they continue participating in this burgeoning industry. So yeah, absolutely. And as always, we're very receptive of feedback. So any suggestions or comments or opinions you guys have pertaining to any of the UI, the UX, any quality of life features, you're more than welcome to shout it out to us. You can shoot me a DM, and then I take all of that stuff. I put it in like Excel docs for both the front end and back end dev team. So they get all of your recommendations and suggestions directly. Dante Dot wants to know, will there be any new features or a different design on the upcoming app? I can't really talk about it right now. So I don't have any information I can share with you guys. I guess you'll just have to wait and see. Let's see here. Oliver wants to know, can we get a hint on the next chain integration? I don't, I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything or not. I don't think I am, so no, I can't really talk about it, but um, it is planned to drop sometime in the next, not not necessarily in March, because you never want to rule anything out, but it should be dropping before the end of April. Um, but again, things change. This industry is very dynamic, and we have one of the smartest, hardest working dev teams in the industry. So, I don't want to promise anything because they continually surprise me with the amount of work they're able to do in the time that they're able to do it. So, my hats off to the Rubic dev team. Um, let's see here. All right. I don't think I have very many more. We have like somebody asking a question right now, typing it up, and I don't have anybody requesting to speak here. Did you have something to add? Did you?
Yeah, actually, I'm intrigued and I wanted to ask a question. How do you actually um, manage a transaction from one chain to another when the bridges takes, quite a lot of time to settle the transfer? Because is there for you like a great opportunity to have those kind of one single asset staking pool where you can use those pools to execute transactions on both blockchains and then settle those intra pool afterwards. How does that work?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't want to misspeak or misrepresent the actual scheme that's taking place behind the scenes. So I'm going to respectfully decline to answer your question, just because I don't want to present any false or misleading information about how it's actually operating, or how we'd be able to manage or handle that in the future. I do know that the change that we made over to stablecoins had a lot to do with the volatility of our own token. So by removing that volatility, and you have a very stable pegged coin that you can then use as kind of the benchmark to move value across networks, it makes it a lot easier for us to facilitate that swap with the least amount of slippage possible. Um, Having said that, just based off of all the data we have and all the metrics we have from all the swaps that have been going through our protocol, the average transaction time is 80 seconds. So, and that's for a multi-chain swap as well.
And
Um,
80 second is it like the whole time for the transaction to be finalized, or is it like a sequential stuff where you need to approve this transaction, then this transaction, then this transaction? For example, because I'm looking at um, the swap at the moment, and
mhm.
I have like I want to change Meta, which is like the Meta pool token on near, and I want to swap that for Aurora on Aurora directly.
Uh-huh.
And this is quite fascinating because yeah, I use Refinance, Rubik Smart routing, and then I end up with WannaSwap, right?
Yep.
So if I click on if I execute that, do I have like a sequential stuff, or do I have like just one transaction and this transaction
Just
gets
one transaction. So the very first time you interact with our protocol, if it is a new token contract, you'll have to approve and validate the token contract to enable
okay?
us to operate and take your token and do the entire process behind the scenes. Once you've approved us to do that, you then are basically just signing your transaction after that. You're approving the swap, and that's it. There's no multiple approvals. We're doing everything else behind the scenes for the user.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's what we like to say. It's a one click multi chain swap. Um, you know,
Okay, nice. Yeah.
yeah. It's. I think it's phenomenal, and I think that there are a number of other people in the industry that are trying to do very similar things. We're constantly compared to guys like AnySwap, multi-chain, and Thorchain, but they're doing entirely different things than we are structurally, and from just a servicing standpoint, from like a product stack standpoint, they're doing something entirely different. Um, and then the other projects that are out there that are trying to basically do exactly what we're doing here at Rubik. I'm not going to name names and throw people under the bus, but it's really difficult. It's like there's a lot of what is it, armchair warriors out there that like to think that they're experts on everything, but I can tell you that it's extremely complicated. What
Yeah, I bet.
what yeah, what our team is trying to do, and all the different handshaking between um, the user interface in the front end and then the back end and how everything's operating. um, and so because it's a very complicated process, and there isn't an established industry to educate new programmers, like all of these guys, they've got to learn these new programming language, they have to learn um, all the different intricacies of these new blockchain networks, and all of that is taken into account when we're integrating new blockchains into our multi-chain protocol. Um, so again, having said that, I'm not going to name names, but there's a number of projects out there that claim to do what we're doing, but then you dig a little bit deeper, and it's taken them an entire calendar year to integrate two blockchain networks, like Polygon and Binance Smart Chain, and that's all they do. And then even then, it's a handful of tokens that they're not basically leveraging all the liquidity pools and AMMs that we're currently leveraging to create this massive 15,000 plus token ecosystem. So um,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
So,
it's but again, so going all the way back to what you had asked me, that's above my pay grade.
so my next question is
That's a great question. I know the team, I mean, the goal last year, um, and as you know, things change, right? You got to pivot and do what's best for the growth and adoption of your project. But um, the goal is to basically have RBC on all the networks that are currently plugged into our ecosystem. I don't know when we'll realize that goal, but that is a goal. So, um,
That's good.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Bobby Brown asks, is the Bitcoin bridge still on track, native or not? As far as I know, it is still on track. I cannot share any information with you right now, but yes, all the information that I have, it is still on track. We will update you guys though, if there's any update from the dev team pertaining to any delays or anything like that. We'll absolutely let you know. Um, Dante Dot says, I know you mentioned that when you joined, you were told that the organization had enough money for 2 years without any revenue. Now that the organization is making revenue, how is the team expanding and growing, and how are you guys finding talent? Well, I am not in the HR department over at Rubic, so I don't know how they're going about finding new talent. I can tell you, though, that we are expanding and growing. I mean, we've got goodness, over a handful of front end devs, a handful of back end devs. We've got business development team. We've got our marketing team. We've got our 24/7, 365 tech support team, um, and then we have all our executives as well. So I think in total, and I cannot forget our fantastically talented artists. We have some awesome graphic designers. I know you guys have seen all the artwork on Twitter and all the different promotional materials we've been putting out. So I'd like to give a huge shout out to our artists as well. They're extremely talented. I think all told, we're close to, if not at, 30 people now for the Rubik project. So as far as crypto companies go, like we have a massive amount of people working on this project, and you need an army of people working on stuff like this. If we're going to build out this protocol, this multi-chain protocol for Web 3.0, and really help, you know, spur the widespread adoption of Web 3.0 and a multi-chain, blockchain agnostic future, we're going to need the man hours to do it. And having said that, with all the people that we have working on the project, they're putting in tons of hours every single week. They're burning the midnight oil. Perfect example was the integration of Near. They were working until 2 a.m. on a Saturday to get that full integration launched and live on the day that we said we would get it done. So I think that kind of work ethic and diligence, and the fact that this whole team is bought into the vision and the goal of our founders Vladimir and Alexandra, which is to create this, or should I say, to make the multi-chain future a possibility, and to be intimately involved in that process. That's like everyone's bought into that vision. So, and we're very really excited to see that happen. So, um, yeah, I can't speak about how we're finding talent, but we are growing, and again, the 2 year runway that was taken into account growth. So now that we are generating revenue as well, only great things from here moving forward for the Rubik team. Oliver wants to know governance update when. I don't have information to share pertaining to any ETAs for a governance update, but the team still is very hard working on that right now. I know that they have been working on, the front end team was working on the UI for petitioning new governance votes, and for voting on those petitions. So we'll share more information as we can. Prof wants to know, are we going to add the Terra network to multi-chain? Yeah, absolutely. That will be something that we will eventually add into our multi-chain ecosystem. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Um, let's see. I don't. It's like a deer emoji. So deer emoji wants to know: do we have any plans to list on Binance or any other noteworthy centralized exchanges? Yes. So we still intend to list our token on tier one exchanges. Um, there are a number of requirements and stipulations that need to be met before a token can be listed. And we have received those requirements and stipulations from a number of different major tier one exchanges, and we are working on satiating those requirements. So we'll have more information to share when we can. But again, as always, we will not be able to share anything directly as it pertains to any listings on any major centralized exchanges. We would have to wait for the centralized exchange itself to make the announcement before we would be able to talk about it due to any breaches in non-disclosure agreements. So, Dear Emoji also asked, it would be great if it would be possible to make a cross-chain swap to a second wallet address instead of your own. Any plans on this? Um, Currently, that it's not possible. I mean, there are some blockchain networks that have different wallet addresses, and so we reflect that in the user interface. You'd have to take the new wallet address on the different blockchain network and paste that before you make your multi-chain swap. But if you're talking something from like Binance Smart Chain to Polygon that uses the same Ethereum-based wallet address, currently it is not possible, but um, we'll have more to share pertaining to this in the future. So that's all I'll say on that for now. But I think you guys will be excited with the things that our team is working on. All right. I think that is pretty much going to do it. We are coming up on 75 minutes. So, Didier, I am going to take the names of all the people who've asked questions on today's podcast, and I'm going to put them in a randomizer and select somebody to win $50 worth of BRBC. So while I do that, is there anything else you would like to add? Any announcements you'd like to make pertaining to Ref Finance before we close out today's interview?
No, thanks again for having me. If those guys have a near wallet, I would be happy on behalf of Ref to match your amount with Ref token. So yeah, maybe let's do that. But no, otherwise, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and thank you for coming on. So I have a winner here in just a second. And okay, Dante Dot, you are our winner today of $50 worth of BRBC. Dante Dot, go ahead and shoot me a DM after today's podcast, and we'll go ahead and hook you up with that $50 worth of BRBC. Okay. Well, Didier, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I really appreciate your insights on the industry and the future of DeFi. You had some really good takes, so thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our listeners today who joined us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for participating. We can't do it without the awesome support of our community. So I sincerely thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back again next Friday. Again, a big thank you to Didier Perroni, the product manager of Ref Finance, for coming on our show and sharing Ref Finance with our community. So thank you again, Didier. And that is going to do it for today's show. So thank you all so very much for stopping by. And as always, stay happy stay healthy, stay hydrated, and stay cubic. Take care, everyone.